nothing positive. Put it this way, it's not. She's not a regular submitter.
Standing. Yeah, sure. That's right. Stand.
Yeah.
And they will let us know when
Councillors will be. Councillors are live. Welcome everybody to council. I'd ask Councillor Fee Dalgety to read the council prayer. Councillor.
Almighty God, as members of the Rangituki District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities in the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in all our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all our people. Amen.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you. Right, welcome everybody. I've just called for apologies before we go into a public forum. I have an apology from Council Warupanapa. And please note that we have Councillor Jill Duncan on Zoom. And councillors, before I ask those to be formally received, please remember that the audio pickup is really high. So if you have a chat with your neighbour, it is likely to be shared with what you did on the weekend with everybody else. Would somebody like to move the acceptance of the apology, please? Thank you. Councillor Carter, we're seconded from Councillor Ash. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. I welcome in terms of public forum, Paul Sharland and Russell Harris, two chambers. And presumably you're going to talk to us about the Chris Amon statue and your visions for its location. Please come up here. Are you guys happy standing?
Yeah, we're all.
So the rules of public forum for those online are they have 10 minutes, which includes question times. How you use that time is up to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're right, so standing. Right.
Thank you for the invitation to make this small presentation. We will be quick. We have it on a PowerPoint presentation, and I think you have a printed out copy that you can go through. So, what we're here on behalf of the Bulls Museum. We've had this idea in our heads for quite some time now, and we would like to proceed with it. So, this is what we're looking at. We want to have a statue of our iconic man Chris Amon mounted in Bulls. I'll just get Russell to just give you a quick overview of what the statue is all about.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you for the opportunity. But New Zealand isn't a great company for recognising heroes, no matter whether it's sport, in ordinary life, or war veterans. We're not. But I believe it's very, very appropriate to recognise Chris for what he's done. He led the world as the youngest driver ever to race in Formula One today. Of course, it's a bit different world. So the concept of the statue, it's life size, it's cast in bronze, which means it blends with the building itself, and the two plinths in the back, the blue and red plinths, represent his helmet design, which he used virtually throughout his career. So that's basically the checker on the ground represents the checkered flag, and the pose that he's in is in 1969 when he won his last big trophies in New Zealand, the Tasman Cup. So and then the panel on the left is in line with modern thinking, and that has the details of his career. So that's it very briefly, Paul.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, now if we can follow through the PowerPoint just quickly, if we just go back to the location.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that's where we envisage it being, but probably more centre there. We couldn't quite get it quickly as centre as we wanted, but if we have it more centre, that would be the idea we would like it. So there's a couple of a couple of visions of where it is. So that's our vision for where it should be. All right, so we'll carry on to the next one. The idea, as we said, came through the Bulls Museum, and it was an idea that I got ages ago. I met Chris Possum-Bourne's sister in Pukekohe, because she got the Possum-Bourne statue, and I also met Kenny Smith, the racing driver, just by a fluke. And he said it's a great idea, so it sort of was born from there. And then we got the likes of Russell Harris here, who's a motorsport guru of Manawatu and been involved in motorsport for 40 odd years. He got on and got the concept design for us. So that's sort of where we are at the moment. So as I said, the idea came from the committee, and we want to keep on going. So the next thing we had to do, the next one, is get the approval of the Amon family. So I personally emailed all the Amon family, and as you can see, there's their response. Very humble, but very proud that we could actually think about doing something for Chris. So that's the endorsements we have. Now, that's the design features. So as Russell said, life-size statue cast in bronze. Statues at ground level, so people want to have their photo taken, they can gather all around and have their photo taken. The red and blue represents the colours of his helmet. And we've gone for the open face thing of Chris, because that was his look, a little bit of hair hanging down over his eyes. That's exactly what he used to look like in his racing days. So we've gone for that design. The sculptor we're talking to at the moment is this guy down south. He's the one that did the Possum Born statue and also the Shrek. And I've seen the detail that he put into the Possum Born statue. It is just intricate detail. And his sister, when they first did it, his sister wasn't happy with Possum's smile, so they sent it back and got a smile right. So he's a very, very good sculptor, and he's very keen to be part of the whole project. So that's the design features. What do we got next? And then the draft wording for the panel on the side. So it just gives Chris's history as he was a racing driver. All right, so I know we're bound by time, but we'll keep on. Is there one more? I did put one more on, but
That's the last page.
oh, it is.
4.5 minutes in, so.
Only 4.5 minutes. So I did put a slide and we obviously haven't got it. What we're seeking from the council is we're seeking the approval from the council to have the statue erected on council land adjacent to the community centre in conjunction with the local iwi plans. The other thing we're seeking is any financial assistance, and I'm just asking for straight for money, but any financial assistance or guidance towards obtaining financial assistance for the project. And the other thing is that if any of you people around this table have got any more bright ideas or concepts that might help, we'd be more than happy to listen to you to get some ideas. But that's basically what we're looking for. We believe it's a great project and it'll do wonders for bulls. People, you know, I've had questions asked me of you know, what's Chris Amon done for bulls? But the answer I give them is it's not what he's done for bulls, it's what he can do for bulls. He mightn't have done much as a kid when he was here because he was overseas racing, but it's what he can do with bringing tourists. And if you ask the same question about Colin Meads, what's Colin Meads done for Tikawiti? He's a rugby player. What's John Walker done for Auckland? What's Peter Snell done for Opaneki? All the same questions. But you know, I took my grandkids recently home through New Plymouth. We went specifically to Tikawiti to have a look at Colin Meads. So, you know, people will come specifically to have a look at Chris Amon. And it also ties in with the very good display we've got in the museum at the moment, because as Russell knows, we get asked lots and lots of questions about Chris Amon, and that, you know, a lot of people don't even know he came from bulls. So if we could get it done, so that's why we thought we'd come to you guys and present it to you and get your thoughts. And has anybody got any questions?
Questions from councillors. Councillor Ash.
Thanks, guys. I'm always really keen to celebrate heroes and anybody within our community. But you have answered a couple of the questions. My first one was, actually, I'm going to leave that because I'm a bit ashamed of that question. But my next question was what was the Bulls connection? And so was he born there and raised there?
Yeah, he was born and raised. His parents had a farm down at Scott's Ferry, and that's where he started his career.
Okay.
So they're very old Bulls family.
Yeah,
Okay. And
anywhere we went in the world, it's always referred to Chris Amon from Bulls New Zealand. All programs listed Bulls. So it was that acknowledgement.
okay. And the other question I had was wondering whether or not you're aware that we've got a sculptor here in Martin that does bronze sculpting.
Yep. Yeah, we would be open to have a look at others, but we got this guy because he'd done the Possum Born. That was, and apparently he's absolutely amazing at doing these sort of sculptures. So yeah, we would definitely look at others.
Right, I have Councillor Nigel Belsham next, Deputy Mayor, followed by Councillor Hira and Councillor Dalgetty. Please, councillors, when you ask a question, doesn't automatically give you the right to ask another 5 questions in other councillors' place. Councillor Belsham.
Thanks, gentlemen, and thank you for the great initiative. I think it's fantastic. Being a motorsport fanatic, I'm very much in favour of it. But my question to you is, have you had any other discussions with anyone in around that town centre site? Because I know there is a group looking at artwork in that vicinity. So there's someone tasked with that role. So I guess that would be a conversation that would have to take place.
Yeah, you talking about the local iwi?
Yes.
Yeah, I did have a discussion with Clint Brown recently,
Okay.
and he's got a copy of the sort of thing we're looking at too. So
Aware of
it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I could give some detail after the conclusion of this.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Hira.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Hopefully you don't get offended by this question, but have you got a roundabout amount that it was going to cost to get it sorted?
Probably about 200,000.
That's my question. Councillor Duncan. Yes, that's your question. Councillor Gordon.
Slightly, well, it's actually quite relevant. Would you consider putting any commentary on about his personal mechanic who he took to Ferrari from New Zealand? I'm referring to Bruce Wilson from Hunterville.
Yep.
Thank you.
I mean, we even thought about, you know, especially in this day and age technology, why couldn't we have a screen there that, you know, you can actually start playing and seeing photos and, you know, your Hunterville guy, all that sort of stuff could come into it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carter will take us the last question, and fitting that you're from Bulls Ward, Southern Ward.
Were there other areas or sites that you're looking at putting the statue?
We have looked at other sites, but this is by far the best. I think you saw the original site, which would get cleaned up by a car, and the
Original comments was you weren't going to use the council land on the other side of the road from where you first thought you were going to put it.
Yeah, on Terry Bownis' site. Yeah, it didn't look right. The background and everything else, and as you said, and Russell made a very good comment that people driving through Bulls shouldn't be concentrating on looking at a statue when they're trying to turn on State Highway 1 or State Highway 3.
John Duncan had a question.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan is zooming in.
I can ask on her behalf.
Certainly.
She's asked. Have there been any objections that you know of, and why?
No, I mean, no objections. The only comment is, you know, why Chris Amon? And that's actually came from a lot of younger people that, you know, who the hell's Chris Amon? Which was quite outstanding. So,
Well, Russell, thank you very much for coming along. I think the feeling around the table is councillors would like to see this happen.
Yep.
And let's see if we can have a conversation on the track. Thank you for making your position plain. You're welcome to stay for council if you wish.
Are you serious?
That is not
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay.
You don't update Councillor Belcham's question.
Yes, please.
Councillor Belcham had a question regarding other interests in the town square area. I'll put a closed door.
Oh, no, he asked me.
All right. As part of the approved work and the contract, the budget that we have for the town square, remembering that work will start in the next week or so, which ostensibly just turns it into a level green area with some footpaths and some lighting and some park benches, etc. We have agreed with Ngaiwara Ki Ngāti Apa to do the artwork in the Te Matapeki building, and Ngāti Whare Waha Waha are doing the artwork for the green space. We've asked Ngāti Whare Waha Waha to come and present to council in the February meeting on some of their ideas, not their solution, but some of their ideas, and I was asking for elected members to give feedback on their ideas. And so there's a potential, I don't know what Ngāti Whare Waha may bring to us in February, and what your feelings on that might be. But we have engaged with them, and we have an agreement for Māori artwork to represent Ngāti Whare Waha Waha to be in the green space.
That agreement isn't exclusive. It can only be their art group and nothing else.
No, these can live side by side quite happily.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for the update. Councillors, please, I'll remind you of the terms of conflicts of interest, as always. Now we'll look forward to the confirmation of the order of business. Are there any changes that I should be made aware of? No, thank you. I'll then move to the confirmation of minutes, attachment 1, pages 6 through to 19, looking for alterations and corrections. 6, 7, 8 and 9, 10 and 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Somebody like to so move? Councillor Belsham moving, seconded. Councillor Wilson, those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried, thank you. Move to the next item, item 6. This is the Mayor's Report, attachment 2, pages 20 through to 23.
Sorry, Your Worship, Jill Duncan had a question on page 14. I might just have to.
It's difficult now that we've moved it, I'm sorry, but I'm prepared to listen to the question.
I'll just see if I can. Difficult times. Okay, Councillor Duncan, do you want to ask or put your question on page 14?
Yes, I had a question around the adoption of the 2019-20 annual report in respect to a comment in one of the, and in fact, I may be out of line here because it was to do with a public excluded report. I've just realised it was public excluded, so perhaps I should hold my tongue until we get
we could hold it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Moving on, as I said, the Mayor's Report, attachment 2, pages 20 through to 23. I will take any questions. I will add on a couple of further comments to myself, along with the Mayor's engagement. In terms of the engagement this time of year, what I haven't put in my report is there are a large number of activities that have either just occurred or occurring, and they range from things like Gumboot Day, AMP Sports this coming weekend, Highland Games this weekend. We've had hearings of at Rata for Makai Patia, so Ngāti Hauti rather. There's a lot going on in this sort of space. We have Kiwi Burn this weekend, and there are probably several others. I would make mention of the Country Music Festival in Martin. Record numbers of turnouts for that. I think I counted at one stage, it looked to be about 500 odd motorhomes, but both parks were absolutely chock-a-block with it. In terms of Rata, the Ngāti Hauti hearings, yes, the other day was the start of the Crown response to the hearing. So we're now entering into the business case end of these discussions. So effectively, the first session that I attended the other day was with regard to landlocked land, and the Crown were accepting that some of the reasons that land was landlocked was because of Crown action. So it'll be an interesting process from here on in. Ratana, the Ratana Festival, as you know, was an abridged one this year with politicians not being invited. I did go to the church service at the temple the other day, and a huge number of people turning up for essentially for the weekend. But I'll take any questions with regard to my report. Councillor Dalgety.
I hope it's an appropriate place to ask, but the water strategy, when are we expecting that to be finished?
No, I could pass that question through to, perhaps could you save that for the Chief Executive's report? It's because it's dealt with in there.
Thank you.
Right, I'll move that my report be received. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Carter, seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. I move. Councillor Carter seconded. We now move on to item 7, the follow-up items from previous meetings, attachment 3, pages 24 to 27. Gordon, you can take us through that.
I'm actually, hopefully they're self-explanatory, but I'm happy to take any questions on anything in that report.
Questions for councillors? Craig, would somebody like to move the receipt of it? Councillor Hira. Councillor Dalgety seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Moving through to item 8, the Chief Executive's report, attachment 4, pages 28 through to 34. Would somebody like to move or receive it at this stage? Councillor Gordon, Councillor Wilson, those in favour? Those against? Carried. And I'll pass to Peter Beggs, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll go through it bit by bit and just add some up-to-date notes. Point 2 on COVID-19 resurgence. You've been familiar with our work on the pandemic plan and our resurgence plan, both within our organisation, but also as part of the wider group. And obviously there's a heightened interest in that, and our staff are well aware of their roles should we move to a lockdown or an escalated state, alert level. Regarding on the drinking water standards, point 3, we are working with Manawatu, who provides this service for us. We're particularly around the water safety plans for Martin and for Taihape. It was reported to council informally that the drinking water from Martin was the cause of some issues, health issues in the community. As a result of that, it effectively was informal. We stepped up our testing, and the testing continues to be clear in line with health standards for Martin. In fact, we did that for the whole district. Sorry. Yeah, Councillor Bersham has a question.
Councillor Bersham.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question in regards with the last bullet point on that. You've got a date that the more detailed information will become available from DWA. Is that February 20? This February 21?
Yes.
It is. There's just 20 in there, so I'll be sure whether it's relating back to a previous report.
Section 4 is a copy and paste from information we've been given from LGNZ, but it provided a really good summary that we didn't want to add or delete. So it is verbatim. I'm sorry if you've already seen that email, but I think it provides a really good synopsis of firstly the impending changes to the Resource Management Act, which we need to be cognizant of, and into some new proposed acts and the Three Waters reform. I'm happy to answer some questions. The key, or two things I would add as part of that. Firstly, there are some regional wide, you'll see there on the bottom of page 33 in Palmerston North on the 11th of March. Some councillors had previously attended the one in sort of mid to late last year. I consider that was of benefit to councillors, certainly was to staff, and I would encourage you, when we get the invitation, when we haven't received the invitation formally yet, but we've got to hold the date on that, I would encourage you to join. It's, as you know, it's a topic for great discussion.
I've had further to that, I've had a conversation during the lunch break with Zone's role within that, and how it will be welcomed, how it will be conducted, and so on. So, yeah.
There's nothing more to add, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, well, perhaps I could answer the questions Councillor Dalgety earlier. I don't know. Unfortunately, Anna's not here, who would have normally given me a full update on your question. I'm happy to take it as an undertaking to provide more information.
Thank you very much.
And particularly, Councillor, you're looking for information around the water strategy for Martin and progress on it.
Yeah.
And over the page, long-term plan.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
No further questions. Councillor Gordon?
Yes, I have one about the 3 new bits of legislation that are signalled in here, the 3 acts: National Built Environment, Strategic Planning and Managed Retreat. Where are they sitting in the government's workload? Do you have any inkling when they'll be arriving on our desks for submissions?
I don't know. I'd be speculating for any other information that's not contained in this report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Carol just reminded me, there was a point in point 5, the long-term plan update. The consultation document won't be ready on the 25th of February, 25th of March. It should be ready.
I just make one point just on what you were asking before, Councillor Gordon. The draft of the submission on the water services bill has just come out, and that submissions are called for by the 2nd of March. So we'll send that around and work on a submission if that's what we want to do for the February council meeting.
Yeah, I think Council was referring to the RMA rather than the water services bill, but it's important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move on then. We'll move on to item number 11. We're plowing through it very well. The memorandum of understanding is the Mangawick Bridge. And if you go to page 36, and in absence of John Jones, who will take us through this.
Forgive me, Your Worship, we're expecting John to be here. So I'll take it on. And
Do you wish to hold that until later in the agenda and see if he turns up?
we've tried calling him, but there's no response. In that regard, I think it's moderately self-explanatory as an MOU. If there were questions, I'm happy to take them back during the course of the meeting and report back. This has been considered by Manawatu and been endorsed by them.
Well, let's receive it first. Councillor Belch and Councillor Dalgety moving and seconding the receipt. And are you happy if we just take questions?
Yes, and if I can't answer them, then I'll take you.
So I had a question in regards with, in the report, it talked around the financial assistance to the financial contribution for ongoing maintenance of the foot and walking bridge at about $20,000 per annum. When I looked through the memorandum agreement, there was nothing signalling about payment of that funds to the potential organisation that would take over management. And I'm just wondering where that signal, when we've been signalled that it's approximately $20,000 per annum to keep it up to a maintenance schedule, but there's nothing in the memorandum agreement that says that will be a figure paid by the councils to the organisation that takes over the management of that bridge. So I was questioning how that actually works.
I think my reading of the document was that, first of all, we will continue to own it. We are responsible for the health and safety issues. So we'd be responsible for that maintenance. But within the MOU, if you could correct me if I'm wrong, there's a clause in there that permits the handing over of the maintenance and essentially the running of the bridge to a trust if both councils considered they were in a position to be able to do that. Am I reading this?
I did read that, but the financial contribution wasn't signalled. Yes, and that was what I was querying. Is that still a liability that both councils will share?
So that's one I need to take on notice.
Yes, that's fine.
Sorry.
Thank you. Has this gone back to the group that has been formed? Are the residents aware of what's been proposed?
Another question? Yeah. So you may wish to have it on the table for this one and bring it back to you in February.
Thank you.
If we can't get the answers today.
Yeah. Can we just regard that as a follow-up action to make sure that that happens rather than...
You can answer any questions? Yep.
Other than that, I'm quite happy. Councillor Gordon.
Along the same lines, have we had any what is the most recent feedback from the group, the Incorporated Society? Are they in a happy place about how this is progressing?
That's not something I can answer either, I'm sorry.
Okay,
yeah.
That's fine.
So there are three questions. Have you got those? The third one is is the society confident or happy, is Councillor's words.
I've got loaded pens at the end of the room. I'll go Councillor Belsham.
I guess the question is, I mean, it's been through the one or two district council, and it is fairly self-explanatory. The queries, I guess, are more clarification rather than anything. And if it needed to expedite the process, I don't see any issue. I would be quite happy to move that we enter into the memorandum of understanding. I'd be more than happy to move it, but it's a substantial report, and I think it's a well-worded document. But they were just clarifications on those questions, I believe.
So you don't think answers to those questions would change?
I don't think they're imperative to us entering into it. So, yeah, I'm happy to move.
Second the councillor's motion.
Councillor Wilson is happy to second it. So you're formally putting it, the second recommendation in essence.
Yes.
Do you wish to speak to it?
Well, I probably spoke just then about it, really. I mean, it is a well-worded document, a well-worded report, and it still gives some scope for both councils to be happy with the organisation that takes over management before the process happens. So I think there's scope for us to actually still to negotiate outside of this agreement.
Any other speakers to the motion? Okay, we skip then the right of reply, put it straight to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving to item number 12, the Project Management Office Report. Top 10 projects, January 21. And
So Jess is online to do this. I'll just wait for you to put it in.
yes.
So this is being submitted by Jess. You'll see, just while she's logging in, a slight change in the reporting format to give you some more information. And if it's okay with you, Your Worship, I'll hand it over to Jess, who's currently in Wellington.
Kia ora, team. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so the report that I've submitted is in a different format, and at the end of the report, I've asked for verbal feedback in this meeting, please, on how it's delivered and how it's presented. We are keen in the PMO to streamline that report and make it as informative as possible. So I'd like to take your guidance on whether it provides all of the information that you need, and if there is anything else that you'd like to see in it.
Jess, can we go through them in order?
Sure.
Very quickly, so that there's a sequence to it. Could I, on your behalf, could I ask councillors whether there's any information you require, questions regards item 1, the Mangaweka Bridge? No. And we'll comment on the format at the end of it. Second one, Martin to Bull's wastewater centralisation project. Questions from councillors? The only question, Jess, I would have is some hesitation on reducing a pipe size when we are looking at potential industries coming in that we're not sure of.
I understand. And it's something we would take into consideration before recommending any actions like reducing the pipe size.
Thank you.
Pipeline needs to be future-proofed.
Yeah.
Can I add something, Worship? Just the cost there of 4.5 is for this financial year, I might add.
Councillor Belsham.
A further question to that project, and it's around the timeline being stretched out, and does that impact our funding agreement with the ministry and requirements to achieving milestones?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So the Three Waters stimulus funding, effectively, we had made some commitments. This particular delay is only a short one. And on the overall scheme of things, I can't recall the exact date by which all of the money should be spent, but I anticipate we'll be able to catch up.
So there was a start date, but there was no finalisation date?
There was a schedule that was agreed with with funding provider whose name escapes me. No, it's not PGF, and it's Crown Infrastructure Partners. It's a long story.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, one question, and it just goes back to the suggestion that the potential cost savings if the pipe size is decreased. Where does that come from? If we set the project up with a set pipe size, where does the suggestion come from that we would need to decrease the pipe size? I mean, was there an underlying reason why that popped into the project to have that done?
It comes through the technical assessments being undertaken of the flow volumes that will be expected to go through that pipeline. Now, those technical assessments are being completed at the end of this month, and the early indication was that potentially the pipe size could be reduced for savings. But we won't have a definitive recommendation at all until probably end of February at the best.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to the next one. Ratana, wastewater project.
Yep, absolutely. And we have Dina in the room as well, who is the project manager for that piece of work, in case there's any questions I can't answer for you.
The only question I have from this is when you glance at the format of the report and you see 4 green arrows and 1 orange arrow, you automatically think this is great, everything's on track. But it's also, it hasn't really progressed as quickly as we would have liked.
Hmm.
So I wonder if almost needs to be some sort of indication as to timeline tracking as opposed to cost, etc.
So if we added, say, a small part on the table that had milestones and expected dates and then actual tracking to them, would that benefit?
Yeah, because otherwise you run the risk of a project that is meeting all safety concerns because nothing's happened.
Understand. That's good feedback. Thank you.
Question, Your Worship, on this one?
Yes, Councillor Wilson, Chair of Assets.
So we've seen this one bouncing around our reports to council in many different formats. Yes, and like I think many of the councils sitting around the table we're in agreement. So this one's quite a good format. But land lease negotiations is ongoing, is something we've read for months and months and months. So my question is, and there may not be one direct answer to it, but why is it taking so long? And who's dragging the chain? Or what's the actual hold up? This has been going on, seems like, I may be wrong, but 18 odd months. So
July 2018.
Yeah, seems like a long time to be carrying on with negotiations, but
perhaps I could, before Adina steps in and gives two answers to the questions that have been raised. The first one is just in terms of the overall project. This is funded by the Ministry for the Environment under the Freshwater Improvement Fund. We have 5 years in order to deliver the solution. And yes, it has been slow to start, and we've advised that we wanted to lease land rather than buy land to do it. And we've been active with the ministry and met them on site with the Ratana community in December last year. So that yes, it's slow to start, but we've got 5 years in which to deliver it. So we will be on time for concluding within that 5-year period. With respect to the lease, that's Adina.
Yeah. We're currently working with the trust that is owning the preferred land, and they now are doing some work on their end, preparing their members for the information that they want to give them about this relationship and about this project. And we are just trying to make sure that we can give them the most information that they then can forward to their people. So currently it's sitting with a trust for some further internal discussions from them, but we are in contact with them every week about this and trying to push it along as we can. And currently also Horizons is doing some work on site, assessing the land for different use and wetland areas, which is a part of this whole puzzle that is coming together. So we are tracking on in the background on this and trying to change the contract we have between Horizons and the ministry to also show that it's a lease now rather than a purchase of land. So there's a lot of little pieces that we're trying to put together.
So the lease option has been approved in principle.
Yes.
So as an option, we can lease with the funding that was.
From the ministry, yes, and that triggers, it needs to change the deed that Horizons had with the ministry.
So therefore Horizons is still involved in the equation with us in regards to consenting on the existing plant.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon.
Just stepping back from this individual project, the fact that we're prepared to enter into a leasing arrangement to solve this problem, does that signal that in the future we might look to other mechanisms apart from direct ownership to solve future wastewater disposal options? In a big picture sense.
Absolutely. Everything's on the table.
Right. Yeah. As a comment, I mean, we used to be quite hard and fast. I mean, I'm thinking back to several trienniums here that we had to own in order to do stuff. But this is almost signalling a new way of solving some intractable problems.
What does?
No, go ahead. And then there's a question either coming from
Councillor Dunn.
The principal thing we're trying to achieve is a positive environmental outcome, and that's why we applaud both Horizons and the Ministry for the Environment who have taken that argument, who have brought to them and have said we absolutely agree with you, and there are in the community as well. The board members that were there were delighted with that approach as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor.
Councillor Duncan is just asking, and it's probably a question for you, Jess. The orange arrow indicates concern, however, it doesn't show the level of concern. Does the arrow turn red when of bigger concern?
And I've messaged Councillor Duncan asking if I could answer that at the end, if there are no objections when we talk about format, with some suggested thresholds for orange versus red.
Thank you. Moving on to the next one, which is
Tūtainui Rural Water Scheme.
Rural Water Scheme. Thank you, Jess. Questions for councillors? I thought you might be questioning this, Councillor Dalgety.
I'm just interested with the Hunterville bore. Is it just sitting there? When do we get an answer as to what's happening with that?
Glad you asked that question, Councillor Dalgety.
And I don't have an answer for that, I'm sorry, at the moment. Gabriella, do you have any further information on that?
Sorry. You met with MB yesterday. Was this discussed as well?
No,
okay.
We didn't discuss this project with them.
It's an MB funded project. Yeah.
Yes, they are aware of the timeframes that that Private were looking at reaching out to the wider farming community with the help from the councillors, and they are satisfied with that for now. But with regards to the bore, I will probably have to seek some more information from Arno and come back.
Councillor Lambert, I know that you were part of the group looking at this with regard to some farmers. Do you have anything you wish to add?
No, I have been in touch with Richard Morrison briefly, and as that, well, as you're probably aware, there was some contact made to the previous committee, and there was only one expressed extreme interest, someone moderately interested. But yeah, a bit of follow-up work will be required. I have spoken to Richard Morrison, and he is still keen, but I haven't made a follow-up phone call, but it's my intention to do so in the not too distant future to keep the wheels rolling. But I think it's still got potential. I really do. It's just a matter of kicking things along.
Thank you. Moving on then to the Bulls Multi-Purpose Community Centre. Questions with regard to that? No. Moving on to the establishment of the new Council Administration Centre and Town Hall Library in Martin. And please, I once again bring to Council's attention, every time this report comes up, I point out that we have not removed this building and this facility as part of that matrix. And until such time as we do so, if at all, then it must feature within these reports.
Understood. Thank you.
Before you move on, Your Worship, I just want to make sure because you do say it every month.
So
Just-
because this outlines the history, can we just be clear then what you want us to, do you want it, that last bullet point where it's got 1, 2, 3, do you want that as a 4?
So when you read this report, it talks only about the different variations of the site in the main street as being a future site. Yeah, it says bottom bullet point, of those people who supported continued work on the town centre site, they asked whether the council should retain and refurbish the buildings, which could indicate that the existing buildings in the main street are retained and refurbished.
So that has to have 4 bullet points, as you said, and the first one being strengthening this site. Would it okay?
Yeah, it may sound as though I'm being pedantic, but we need to justify the business case with regard to this whole option, and that clearly sits on the table until such time we've been able to do that. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. We'll have that clarified next month.
Thank you. Next one, the Tai Happy Memorial Park development. And I note that there was a meeting last night in Tai Happy around that. And I thank Adina for being there, Gayleen. Do you wish to update us on that in addition to this report?
I think, yeah, we just had a conversation with the park users about any things that we might have missed in the scope and that we should maybe be aware of. There were a couple of, a few things that we made lots of notes and we just may include it in the design. They're minor changes, you know, like sliding windows or something like that. So they're not major ones, but we will include some of the changes in the design and have updates in the future as well when we have a more detailed design with that group again.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon is chair of the Park User Group. You were there at the meeting along with Councillor Hero. Do you wish to comment?
The comment I'd make is that it was a very positive meeting. People came along with really wanting to solve any minor problems that they perceived or not. They didn't look to the past, they're looking ahead, which is brilliant. And one of the groups, which is the Squash Club and Fraternity, who are not directly involved in the space, were positive that we've made a decision about what we're doing, and so that guides changes they're making for their facilities on their own site and how they're going to interact with other groups who will use both sites. So I think going forwards, there's a new sort of unity starting to build around this project and that side of the park, which is positive.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gordon. That was my read on it as well. And I should acknowledge that, that the third ward councillor, Councillor Gordon, was online with Zoom as well. Sorry, Duncan. Sorry, Councillor Duncan. So, yeah, Councillor Hero, do you wish to comment at all?
No, just to reinforce what Councillor Gordon has said. I thought it was to be able to sit and listen to people. It was a positive meeting, and yeah, I thought it was good. So the continuation of those meetings will be good. And get good feedback from, I think, from the architect. So he was able to take on board a lot of the potential changes or, you know, suggestions that were put forward to him. But yeah, it was good.
Any further questions from councillors? Moving on to number 8, Martin Memorial Hall upgrades, and I see we have a combination of colours here.
Yeah.
Who's going to
So we are currently on budget. So the only thing that came up after the asbestos removal, so the asbestos removal has been completed, but we discovered that the roof is leaking. So the roof needs a full replacement, unfortunately. So that's going to also put us behind the schedule, because we need, so the hall will be open for the sharing sports competition that will be taking place there on the 7th of February. We will put temporary lighting in, so the hall will be fully usable, and the roof has been patched up just in case there's rain on the weekend. So the hall will be fully usable, but we need to replace the roof before we can reseat the ceiling. So that potentially is going to add maybe 3 to 4 weeks to the schedule. I have met with MB yesterday to discuss the project, and I took the MB representative to the hall, and she was satisfied with the project and no concerns were raised from her.
Good.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, we have, this is a funded project, shovel ready, I believe. Do we have enough money within that to replace the whole roof, or is this a cost coming back to council additional?
Yes, that's an additional cost that will be.
Which we would have to be meeting as a council, or is additional back to MB? Funding source?
So firstly, this wasn't a shovel-ready project. It was a COVID funded project through PGF, but not a shovel-ready project. The roof was never included in the project, so we didn't seek funding for the roof. Effectively, we've now discovered that the roof has got a maintenance issue, and so any budget that we would need to use to fix the roof will come from Galen's operational budget, as we would on any other day for any other building.
Thank you.
Councillor Gordon, question.
Yeah, question for me is around this roof. Does this highlight that our asset management processes are not picking up on small or large things around our asset, what's the word, quality or age? Or is there something else there? Is it that we're looking and we've missed it, or that we have processes that don't look?
I think there probably has been a lack in the asset management, and Arno has proposed in the first 3 years of the LTP, it might be a new one, sorry, that we have put funding aside to have someone come in and thoroughly assess all our buildings, and then we'll develop the asset management plans from those.
Thank you.
Further questions? No. Where are we up to? Putarino landfill.
And you'll notice we've got our red arrow in there with regards to cost.
That
So,
red arrow,
pardon.
that also could be overridden by the fact of a potential subsidy. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, Jess, in terms of council, I appreciate the effort that you have gone to with regard to this. It's above and beyond. And if it is successful, we owe you.
Thank you. Fingers crossed. Let's see if we get it first.
Yes. Any further questions around that? So this work will start in February?
It has begun. They've begun site establishment. So the area is fenced off now, but we can't start any of the actual remediation work until we receive a resource consent, which is also good timing because the funding, should we receive it, doesn't cover any work already undertaken. So we'll want an outcome of the funding and two resource consents before any excavation starts, but we are technically on site.
Good.
Just one quick question to that one, Your Worship. Have we ourselves actually physically gone to the face of that? And when was the last time as RDC, is it from a risk we're actually at the face? Have we actually had eyes on the face of that, of Putarino?
I've seen it 2 or 3 times, and I'm sure the staff will have seen it many times.
Yeah, when was the last time we were actually there though?
I can't see it. Oh, in fact, Jess, you want to answer that with regards to the drone that you flew last year?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of people being on there, I was on there about 10 days ago to check the site establishment. I'm not sure if your question was regarding that or if it's with regards to the current stability of the landfill and any further erosion. We commissioned drone footage in December to check whether there was any further deterioration, and there was no change from the last lot of footage, I believe at the start of last year. So we're comfortable that it is not eroding at any increased rate, and that this isn't currently an emergency situation that would circumvent a resource concern.
Thanks for that. The question was just I wanted to make sure that we'd had eyes on it, because we've seen recent publications which were somewhat misleading as to what the state of the face of Puterino was. So I was just looking to make sure that we could point out that our on-site assessments of the site are regular and accurate to what is actually being predicted in some other media formats and things. So we are well over it. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
Councillor Belsham, question?
It was in regards with the funding application and when we were expecting to hear about that. And I see in the report it said January, end of January. Is that still on target?
I spoke to the ministry last Friday, and they couldn't commit to the end of the month. It could be early February, and I've let them know that, look, we are still waiting on a resource consent that is due on the 9th of February, well, 2 that are due on the 9th of February, and they are going to endeavour to get us an answer by then.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 10, subdivisions. Questions regard to that. And the question from me, first of all, is Hereford Heights. We were going to then directly negotiate with a contractor to do that work. Can I have an update as to where we're at?
Yeah, I have sent the detail to the developer, and he is trying to get us a quote back early next week. He's very keen and eager to quote us for the job and do a good job on the intersection.
If I could add to that, Your Worship, just to consider that this was a project that was delayed through COVID and availability of engineering resources, etc. We then tendered the project, we had 0 responses based on the tenderer's workload. And so now we're going through and complying with their procurement policy to go directly to the developer himself to quote for the works.
Thank you. Further updates or questions, Councillor?
Well, I guess just following on from that, and it's a bigger picture thing about the ability to resource some of our contracts. Is it becoming an issue to actually have tenders coming forward for some of the things we're putting out? Are we seeing that as a trend?
When you read the contractors' magazines, they're saying exactly that.
Yeah. It's not one that I regularly read, so yeah, but that's great. I mean, so what have we got in place, I guess, to nullify that, because that's going to become an issue for us moving forward.
My objective is to make working for Whare Intiga District Council, but make us both approachable and easy to work with. And so I have the team now looking at some of the processes that we have to make it attractive to work for us. There are some things that we can do that for example, how quickly we pay invoices, etc. But a lot of it is in our engagement with our supply chain, and I think we do have some way to go in that area to make sure that we are understanding for our contractors to understand our forward workload, and for us to understand their capability to deliver, and therefore we could come back, particularly to assets and infrastructure, and talk about some of the risks that we might see in that area.
Thank you.
We'll take an undertaking to get the contract magazine to you.
I'll take that His Worship's comments on board and read it.
Right, I guess, Jess, we're now at the stage of you're wanting feedback on terms of the way you've put forward the report. You've had some feedback from me around the timeliness aspect. From me, I like the arrows. I like the colour coding. I think it's simple and you can read through reports at a glance and then focus back. Are you happy to take questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Lambert.
Just sort of following on from Jill's question, I don't quite know whether you have a category for each colour, but I'd just comment, don't be afraid to use the red arrows if you feel we need to see one. Like, you know, it's better forewarned than forearmed, so you do.
Thank you. I wanted to propose categories for using amber and red, if it's okay if I propose those now.
Jess, we might talk about that as part of the PMO and not here, because we want to get that right internally first.
Okay.
Councillor Dalgety.
Jess, I think it's a great reporting format, thank you. I just would like to see those numbers and the costings. Sometimes you've got a budget there with no number, and I really like that we now can see the dollars allocated to each project. Thank you.
Sure, happy to do that.
And just to add on that, so thank you. We understand schedule and budget are both important. How we're tracking against those in this report, we'll have those as takeaway. Just with regards to the colour coding, why I've asked Jess to hold off, part of the project management office is setting the boundaries to what makes a green, an amber or a red. And we are yet to do that. So for example, we may have anything that's within plus or minus 5% of budget, or within plus or minus 1 week of schedule or 1 month of schedule is green. Anything plus or minus 10% or 7.5% might be amber, and so on and so forth. We haven't made those settings yet. But that will, once we have those settings, that will become your ready reckoner to say, yes, we understand the severity of the colour, but we haven't actually developed that, but it is on Jess's work plan. The second thing is we also will give some guidance around the direction of arrows. At the moment, they're going level left to right. So the trend is basically saying, yeah, it's going okay, but we're noticing a worsening of this particular issue compared to the last time we reported. So for example, it might still be in the green category, but last time it was minor. We were 2% under budget, but now we're 2% over budget. It's still green, but it's trending orange, if that makes sense. So that's why there's a combination going in there. The challenge in there is when you talk about either risk or cost or finance, when you see an upwards arrow, you go, oh, it's getting better, but it's actually more cost, which is actually, so we need to define those to help you interpret our reports.
The only comment I'd make around that is if you set a definitive level of percentage out of budget, if the budget was $30 and it's going to cost another $20 to fix it, I don't really want to know about it. But if it's 30 million and it's going to cost you another 20 million to fix it. So there's a bit of respect against the capital value. Further questions, councillors? Thank you. Any further comment you would like to make, Jess?
No, I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Right. Would somebody then like to move that the meeting be received? Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Ash. Oh, sorry, I took that.
Wait, no, it's good.
Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Would somebody like to also receive the verbal feedback with regard to the format? Thank you. Councillor Lambert, Councillor Hirard, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Councillors, moving to item 13, the financial snapshot, December 2020. And Mr. Toombs, are you going to take us through this?
I can do. I'd like to start off by acknowledging Kat, our management accountant's contribution and efforts in putting the report together. So thanks, Kat. And I think
the clever one, as was indicated earlier today.
Clever one. Yes. You're familiar with the format now, the extra narrative. So I'm happy just to go to questions. That's okay.
Councillor Beltram, Chair of Finance, do you wish to make any comment?
I had a couple. They were just questions around the first one was on the first page under subsidies and grants, and we've received a 78k grant for a public toilet. I couldn't quite remember which one that was for. Do you know that?
I'll come off the top of my head. Okay, if you can remember.
No.
Is it okay if I respond to it now?
I know we did apply for a few, but
If I can take it on notice and
that's fine.
Sorry.
And the other question was on page 60 under CapEx report and 8, the major areas below budget. And number 3, Turrakina Valley Road had a full year budget of 1.1 million under CapEx. But there's a comment in there about that this work may be classified as repairs, which then comes out of the operating expenditure. What's the story or reasoning behind that?
I won't have the full background to that. I believe we've got a capital budget. The nature of the works mean that it might be repairs as opposed to creating a new asset, in which case we'd have to classify the expenditure as operational.
It's a significant shift, isn't it, to pull into the operational budget out of CapEx?
It'll be unbudgeted, yeah.
I just wondered about that one. If you decrease the risk profile to an asset, could you then justify it as a capital because you are not replacing like by like? So for instance, when on this occasion you have a road that was unprotected right beside the river, and they're building crib walling and protection as part of that rebuild, I would have thought that an argument could be put forward that it is a capital work. We have eroding people.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the detail of the actual nature of the spend, but yes, if the spend is in creating a new aspect to the asset, then it would be capital. If it's repairing an existing asset, then it would be operating.
Yeah, that's why I wonder whether the lowering of the risk profile actually could be a justification.
I can speak to Aaron and double check that in time for the next meeting.
Yeah, potentially. Thank you. We have a question online.
Yeah, Councillor Duncan, question page 60. Is this the Taihape Falls Road? I think that's the last bullet point on the major areas.
So the last bullet point in section 8.
Aileen, do you know the answer? Through your worship, it's the Martin Swim Centre. Martin, okay. And the second question, what work delays in Taihape is causing the budget variance, please?
The rest deferring to where?
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety.
Question. That's just
We still have an open question.
just trying to work out.
Domains is the budget variance.
Oh yeah, his grandstand.
Number 8.
Domains has a budget variance due to delays.
Our domains is a budget variance due to delays on work to Happy.
I'm assuming that will be for the new amenities building.
Oh, yeah.
So if there's one thing that I've learned since I've been on council, it's that toilets are very expensive. And I'm just interested in this grant, like, you know, how do we get a grant? What's eligible for grants and what's not?
We had, I think it was in the last financial year, for example, we had an MB grant. They had, you could apply for, at that stage, it was the capital programs, and we installed a toilet in Queen's Park, one at Queen's Park, Pepakai Park and Bruce Park. We got funding for those ones. For the last few years, they've just had operational grants. And that's where we've been applying for the maintenance, the cleaning, emptying the wastewater tanks, etc.
So if we're building any going forward, do we apply for a grant or not?
Only if there's eligible criteria, we certainly will.
Tourism Infrastructure Fund, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yes.
Well, I think a supplementary one to that line of questioning to staff was with regard to the Taihape Memorial Park building. We have looked to engage with a private company. So there was a recommendation that we do that. So we engage with experts in the field to see what grants could be potentially applied for.
That process, Your Worship.
Yeah. So it's something we may well do in the future with other projects.
So my question was leading on from that, would we apply that on a district-wide basis on other facilities such as this? I think it's probably just been answered, kind of.
I think we see how well they deliver.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Belsham.
Just one other area under the Treasury and Debt, number 13. And under the cash and cash equivalents, we had a position as at the 31st of December of 10.7 million. And a position at 30th of June, as per the annual plan, of 9.5 million. But in the comments, it's expected to be around 3 million.
Yeah, so our capital plan, I think we spent 6 mil up to the end of December, with a capital budget of 30 million for the year. So there's a huge capex plan to be spent between January and June.
So that rather than borrowing debt, we're using the cash and cash equivalents, is that?
If we spend the capex that we're planning to spend, I expect our debt to be around 8 million at 30 June. Yeah. So all the cash, but we'll have a working balance, but we won't be having term deposits. We'll have some debt.
Yeah. I just wondered how that sits within our policies. I thought we had a policy based around holding a cash or cash equivalent of the 5 million. And there's a comment, and that comment states that it's expected to be at 3 million for cash and cash equivalents. So is that falling outside of our management policy? Yeah. Thank you.
Any further questions around the financial snapshot? Dave, I'd like to take the opportunity, thank you for your report, but also acknowledge the huge amount of work that's going on trying to put an LTP together, and acknowledge that probably in the time that I've been involved in local government, this would be by far the most challenging process that I've ever had anything to do with, especially when it is coupled with such a dramatic revaluation of the capital values of the properties within our rohe. So thank you, we appreciate it. I know that you've come back a lot of the time during the holiday break to work on this. That councillors may not be aware of, but we are very appreciative. Appreciate that your department has done that. Thank you.
It was a team effort, yeah, but thank you very much, yes. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm moving on to item 14, the minutes and recommendations from committees.
I'm happy to move that
As a
report.
block.
No, they're happy to move the financial snapshot.
Yeah, thank you. Who should we have this time? Seconded by Councillor Hero. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Moving on to item 14, the minutes and recommendations from committees. Would somebody like to move them as a block? Councillor Valverde, seconded by Councillor Gordon. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Now the following resolutions. The first one is from Finance and Performance. Can we just scroll back down again? No, that's
No,
not.
it's just noting.
Yeah.
That's all.
So were there any further recommendations that we need to deal with? I think I'm fine, aren't I?
It's just fine.
Right. I have no late item tabled in front of me. Councillors, no. So would somebody then like to move that we move into public excluded? This is largely to deal with contracts. For those that are online, this is a normal part of council processes. And as a result of public excluded, when we move back into an open meeting, we will detail the outcomes of any of those discussions. Thank you.
Happy to move, Your Worship.
Councillor Wilson moving. Councillor Carter seconding. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Staff, do we want to or need to take a break for a minute?